right, so welcome back. This lecture is going to be on cultural influences in consumer psychology, a really interesting one. I am sure all of you have heard of examples before, very humorous ones, probably, of companies that have kind of messed up in their translation when introducing a product in another culture. So very important, right, to study this cultural influence. Culture is very powerful. Sometimes there is a tendency to think that with globalization, people will become more and more similar across cultures, that they'll increasingly eat the same foods, wear the same clothes, watch the same TV programs, over time, that they'll become more and more alike. But reality can be very different. Culture affects the products that people choose to purchase. For instance, French men actually use more cosmetics than French women. In India, Kentucky Fried Chicken needs to offer mostly vegetarian options to succeed. And Americans are unlikely to develop a taste for snake blood, but this is a delicacy in some other cultures. Different cultures also use products differently often, to address different needs. For example, Zimbabweans not only use Western Lifebuoy soap as intended, but they also use it as fish bait. Additionally, symbols used in advertising like language, logos, even colors are interpreted differently. We'll be looking at many amusing bloopers in this lecture, but let me whet your appetite with this one. When Euro Disney first opened their theme park, and obviously Euro Disney, so in Europe, with their intended symbolism of vitality and life, they could not understand why their amusement park was viewed morbidly by many European visitors, until they discovered that purple, used heavily in their advertising, is morbidly associated with the crucifixion in European Catholic culture. So to develop a successful marketing strategy, an organization must take into consideration the cultural influences of the society where a new product is being introduced. Now, our formal definition of culture is, even that one's a little difficult, right? It's easy to recognize, but difficult to define. That is a quote, by the way, if you didn't recognize it, from Potter Stewart in 1964. And he was actually talking about porn. But culture is kind of like humor or porn. It's easy to recognize, but it's difficult to define. So our formal definition, we are going to define culture as shared ideas about what is important, useful, and desirable. Shared ideas about what is important, useful, and desirable. Culture is expressed in so many ways, through knowledge, beliefs, art, laws, morals, customs, habits, language, etc. Okay. So our formal definition, but it also helps sometimes to think of it more informally. So I'm going to give you an informal definition too, to add to that in your mental framework. So an informal definition of culture is like this: a society's culture is its personality. Okay. So culture is variable, just like personalities vary between individuals. Cultures vary between societies. What is normal in one culture may be abnormal in another. Desirable in one, undesirable in another. Moral in one, immoral in another. Viewed one way in one, completely different in another. Culture is also dynamic, meaning, that it changes over time, ever changing, evolving over time. For instance, in the United States, ideas about gay marriage have evolved significantly in recent years. So it's important to understand and study culture. We're going to look at the components of culture here. There's four main ones we're going to look at. We're starting with values. Okay. What is values? The definition of values is what is considered acceptable or unacceptable. Okay. Cosmopolitan magazine has to change much of its content for its Chinese version because in China they're not permitted to mention sex. So, for instance, an article in the United States about uplifting cleavage changed in the Chinese version to one about uplifting youthful dedication. Okay. Now, they also have to exchange a lot of the sexual content in their Swedish versions because the Swedish culture is so open about sex that it doesn't grab readers' attention like it does in the United States. Symbols, another component of culture. The major cultural symbol of a society is its language, spoken and unspoken. So imagine the surprise of the American Dairy Association's Got Milk campaign managers when they found out that this translated in Spanish to, "Are you lactating?" Other forms of culture symbols include folklore, drama, dance, music, even color. But the main one, the major cultural symbol of a society, is its language. Rituals, the third component, are patterns of behavior that are learned and repeated. Okay? Oftentimes these could be celebrations of major life events such as births, marriages, graduations, funerals or life celebrations, wakes. Imagine, trying to sell Christmas trees in Vietnam. However, the same international nursery might actually do very well to market plants in preparation for Tet, and that is for the Lunar New Year in that market. Also, there are many smaller rituals in cultures like morning grooming rituals or having brunch every Sunday at your favorite restaurant. And the last component we're going to look at here before we move into a major model is thought processes. They also differ between cultures. Some examples of thought processes are attention, interpretation, and memory. So we differ between cultures in what it is we pay attention to, how we interpret things, and what we tend to remember. Just as an example of that, in the United States, consumers tend to only process the central figures of an advertisement, tending to ignore background items altogether. And people from some other cultures tend to take in the whole picture in an advertisement, and they're actually able to report specific details of what they've seen, even in the background, given the same amount of time. It's that cultural difference.